okay, I guess I'll do my two.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever considered that right now, all of us are hurling through space at 200,000 miles per hour, plus or minus. The Earth is orbiting the Sun at 67,000 miles an hour, and the whole solar system is orbiting the Milky Way at 200,000 miles an hour. Part of the time the Earth's velocity adds to that, part of the time it subtracts from it. So right now we're moving somewhere between 137,000 miles an hour and 267,000 miles an hour. In fact, the typical human during a 70-year lifespan travels 300 billion miles through space without burning one drop of gasoline to do it. So what we're doing is we are recreating those space travel conditions on Earth so that everybody can enjoy them on a daily basis instead of just a few lucky astronauts. And the strength of this message is that it appeals to almost everybody. And so some of the challenges that I've had is I get off onto my
Technical.
The modes that I go into are these rants about stuff like global warming, the positive aspects of global warming, in fact, that are kind of counter to the core of the message. And what I'm trying to do is bring more emotion into the message and to connect with personal stories instead of all the technology and the teams that we've assembled and those types of things. I'm trying to transition into that.
Okay. So you want the story to be about speed, and you know what? I want a slide up here because I'm not a numbers person. So when you're going through all these numbers, I'm wanting to see a slide up here with just, and do Steve Jobs, which is black slide, white text in the middle. One number per slide. All right? He was a master of that, and it was brilliant. So just give me a number.
The slide that we have, it is a picture of the world from space with a person floating out in space from a space capsule perspective.
Okay.
And then the headline just says perpetual motion is proven.
Okay. That's good. That's a good opener. And then you move to black slide with a number, and give me a number. One of the first ones you gave in your first sentence.
Right now we're moving somewhere around 200,000 miles an hour through space.
Okay. So you're going to say the number first. You're going to say, 200,000. What's that?
Oh, so mine once more.
Yeah. So you're asking the audience. You're putting up numbers. That's how fast every single one of us is moving right now. Black screen, another white number, whatever that would be. So you're teaching us these things, but for those of us that are number challenged, we have them visually as well as we're hearing them. Because there's people that are going to come hear you you're going to have some engineers, you're going to have some scientific types. You're also going to have some folks who are just really darn curious about what the heck is this about from a social perspective. Those of us who live in the social sphere are not numbers people. See what I'm saying? Yeah. So flash it up there and then land it. What does this mean? Any of you could do that with the number of sales you have, with the number of people, the number of initiatives, Did you know the EPA did so many initiatives, like whatever. You could do the number thing on the slide. It's very, very powerful.
So just a number with no units? So it doesn't say miles per hour?
Nope. You are the one that says that. But first you put the question in their brain because that's where you pull them in.
200,000 what?
Yeah, 200,000. So, did you know that's how fast you're moving right now? Okay? Or whatever, however you say that. Okay? And then flash another one up there. What's another one?
50 times more transportation per kilowatt hour of electrical energy than the most efficient electric cars or electric trains.
Yeah, okay, that's a little more complex.
What I think what the key is from what you've explained is, because I think you actually said this too at some point in the talk, or earlier when you introduced yourself, is the amount of time it would take to get from one place to another with this transportation device.
Yes.
I think that's a significant number that might resonate, because the other stuff is just whoosh.
People can relate.
And the question would be, that's good. And the question would be, 2 hours. Where could you go from Denver, Colorado in 2 hours? You could go to Pueblo.
My God.
I'm going to share with you today that you could go to Beijing.
See, that's
Whoa.
what I remembered from his
Boom.
talk.
For
Okay.
a tenth of the cost of flying.
Well, you can get into that. You can get into that later. Just give us
Right.
one piece of content at a time. But what you have to do with the adult audience is you have to put it in context of what they already know. They know it takes, 2 hours to get to Pueblo. They don't know about this other stuff where you're going to take them. But put it in our context first, and then boom, out here. So it's what you do. I'm going to take you out of your current context. So the only way you can take people out of current context is put them in their current context first. And then they're ready to travel, but they got to see, okay, here's where I am, here's what's going. You see what I'm saying? Start with the familiar.
Instead of this field,
Because that's the incredible thing about what you're talking about here, is there's another way to think.
Yeah, what about in the stats, and I'm bad at that too. If he did this thing to Beijing, it's the same thing as down to college thing. And he said that, now he's got my curiosity raised like crazy. And instead of telling me more, you excite me more. So each one is an exciting step because it's just space travel. But how do you relate it back to us?
And people, you get your skeptics in the audience. We're going to talk about style in a minute. You've got a bunch of analytical skepticals out there who are going, oh man, this guy, what is it, Star Trek? What are we doing here? So you have to take us into the logical, be Dr. Spock for a minute,
yes.
And take us into some data that's going to substantiate what you're saying fairly soon. This is pretty bizarre.
In fact, that is the next slide. It is showing that it really is being done, and that there's a whole team of people all over the world that are doing it.
I think that's important because it lends to credibility and believability.
Right.
I mean, I think it's exciting and cool, but in my mind, I'm thinking.
What the
It's a
heck?
positive.
Skeptical. Of course.
Yeah, they would say, if you came in and said, do you think you could fly in a vacuum? Really? Aren't the astronauts doing that? In other words, you go to the real world, because he had me a hard time believing that I could live, that there is a tube that could go 3,000 miles that was pure vacuum. And that was my hardest thing to get over. But he never said, he could remind me, you're doing it right up there.
It's the most proven form of transportation in the universe. All of us have been traveling this way our entire lives through space.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd avoid the first part though, because proven is, maybe it's just academia, my academia background, but if
You're
talking
going to question
scientists,
that. You're going to question that. Who proved it?
Right.
It's
It depends on the audience, I
Yeah.
guess. Then you're talking.
Well,
most common and maybe or most normal, natural, the most natural form.
okay. All right. Good job. All right. Now, before you put the mic down, give us a little bit of a thumbnail, because we had the question about DaVinci itself and a little more history about DaVinci, if you can, because there's a few folks here that are new to the organization.
Oh yeah, good.
A little bit of
Yeah.
thought on that.
Yeah, we became acquainted with the DaVinci as soon as I grew up in this area, more Loveland and Greeley area on a farm, fifth generation farm. My dad was a chemistry and physics teacher, and so he planted in a very early age the interest in math and science. And when we moved back here, Nick Grzilli from California got to looking and said, hey, there's this futurist in Colorado by the name of Thomas Fry, and you got to have a meeting with him. So I look up the website and I see the flamboyant, he's wearing the DaVinci uniform, with this 16th, 17th century, 16th century get-up. And so I'm kind of intrigued by that. And then I started reading about Thomas Fry and how he's the most decorated scientist working for IBM, over 250 awards, more than any other engineer at IBM. And that he has started this organization known as the DaVinci Institute. And so we set up an appointment, Nick set up an appointment for us, and we came and met in the vault, which is another really unique experience, and told Tom a little bit about ET3, and so he started telling us about the DaVinci Institute and what it was, and Brenda and I were so intrigued with it that we decided to join right there on the spot and buy what was it, super membership, for an annual super membership when you start explaining everything that's done. And this is a co-working environment where they sell space in here too on a monthly basis, where you can come in here and work with all these other companies that are really interested, like this aerospace firm and a patent, or not a patent attorney, but an attorney that is into entrepreneurial aspects of helping people get started with their businesses and stuff. A stockbroker over here, just a real eclectic group of really bright people. We met Bob right away and just got really intrigued with the things that he's doing, different inventors. There's the Inventor Showcase is one of their annual events. That's a huge event down in Denver. So it's just really been a shortcut to meeting a lot of really very interesting people, and we're really glad to be members. So I highly recommend it.
I'd like to add one little thing. I started with him in '97 in my house when he was just starting. And the thing I want you to know as a newbie is that they cover things like speaking, they cover things like technical, they cover virtually everything that's intriguing and usually somewhat either helpful or futuristic. They have a coder class in here that's just gone bonkers the last year.
Well, yeah, they're branching out into the DaVinci coders, and in Brown Bag Wednesday, you can kind of come in here and get an idea of what that coding class is by observing it, I guess, and that's this coming Wednesday. So the public can come in here and check out what that's all about. That they can teach coding in a much more compressed fashion, very intensive course if you want to learn the most valued programming skills right now. Ruby on Rails is kind of what they're focusing on for that. So DaVinci Institute, highly recommended.
Yeah, thank you. Does that help a little bit?
It does.
Yeah. I never know exactly what I'm going to hear from Tom when I have a conversation with him. So he's kind of an out there thinker, but he sees a bigger picture sometimes than some of the rest of us see, and that's what I appreciate. I'm in one of his kind of think tank sort of things where he invites several of us in for our ideas about some certain things, and we have amazing conversations. So it's a place to kind of get your brain stretched, which I think is good. Okay, so anybody else want to give it a shot? You want to get up? Yes, okay.
Is it on?
Yeah.
So you make your own soap, and have you ever thought about? Let me start over. So we're all here today because we make our own soap, Bath and Body Care products, cosmetics. But have you ever thought about taking it to the next level and opening your own retail store? But you're not sure if it'll succeed or fail. You maybe don't know if you have enough capital to get it going.
And you know what I would do with that? I would start with the simple, because we want to get everybody's attention. I would just say, soap. Pause. Take a step. Soap? Okay, I would say it 3 times, 3 different ways. You can do that quick. I mean, just play with this as a concept. Everybody in the room, soap. That's what everybody in this room is about. Okay, what's next? What's after soap? Then you go into, but all I'm saying is let's engage quickly. Let's do something kind of dramatic. Audiences expect drama. You don't feel like you have to be an actor, but the truth is, we're entertainment junkies, and we expect some drama. So give it to them. And you could say soap 3 times, 3 different ways, and then say, so what's next? What are you gonna do with your soap? You know, and you may get a laugh out of that because of the audience that you have. I'm here today to tell you how to take it to the next level, because that's what we've done. Let me tell you about our business, and then you can go into who you are and some of that. Does that make sense, where I'm going with this? Yeah, yeah, because now it's like, yeah, okay, I get the soap thing, so what? But take us again to where we are, and then take us out of where we are, because that's what you're going to give us today. All right, you want to play with that a little bit?
Soap.
Soap? That's why we're all here today. It's soap. It's what brings us together. It's how we all know each other. It's how we've met. And it's what you do. It's your passion. So how do you take your soap making craft from your basement to a business, into your retail store?
That's good. That's a good line. Basement to business. Love that. Love that. Yeah, okay.
All over around the floor.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Okay. How's that feel?
It feels good. It made me feel a little bit more loosened up and like I can continue on and not feel nervous.
Okay. So you say the word, pause, beat. Say it a different way, pause, beat. Say it a different way. The pauses are one of the most important tools you have in speaking. It's what a lot of speakers leave off. That's why people do ums and ahs. It's a verbal pause. They're filling the space. We don't like pauses. But if you'll notice, in the English language, there's a period at the end of a sentence. That's exactly what your voice needs to do. And beware of something we call upward inflection. And you don't do this, but since I mentioned period, you will hear a lot of beginning speakers, a lot of people when they first start speaking, their voice is going up all the time, and it's like, and then we did this, and you know, I really feel strongly about, and I'm not taking a word of that seriously. Because the voice is going up, it creates uncertainty in my mind as the listener. Does this person really know what they're talking about? It's upward inflection. It's what we call the Valley Girl syndrome. It's that, whatever, you know, your little voice is going up, and it's not just women that do it, men do it too. It's an insecurity, and it ends every sentence with a question mark. That's why videotaping yourself is an important thing to do, because you'll catch it. And when I work with brand new speakers, I hear it all the time, particularly if they're uncomfortable. A student would get up there, the voice is going up. So just be conscious of that when you videotape yourself. And we were talking about possibly getting out in front of some other audiences before this conference so that you get a feel for the content and how it's received.
Yeah, we've just got several friends that will be there as well, and they're also giving speeches, so see if we can get them all together.
That's great. Yeah, that's great. And this would be a great talk for Chamber of Commerce, women's group, women's chamber, any of those kind of things as well. I mean, there's some important places you could speak. None of these people are going to pay you, but that doesn't matter. When you're practicing your speaking, just get out there and speak. That's the best teacher that there is. Sales groups, there are sales groups that meet every breakfast, lunch, and dinner somewhere in this city. I speak it, if I'm not doing anything and they call me, I go. I'd rather be on the platform than anywhere else. Besides, it's a great place to try out new material because they're not paying me anyway. So I'm trying out. And you know, if the story falls flat, it's like, oops, okay, but so what? I haven't lost anything. And it also is a way that your brand is out there and people will come to you or say, hey, could you do this for me? Or could you coach or whatever? I mean, getting out there is one of the most important things that you can do. They have library talks, and many of you with some of the technical things that you're doing could go speak at a library for an hour for a program. Just get on the dockets of these things and get out there and do it. And have a friend in the back of the room with a video camera. It does not have to be an expensive camera, it can be a camcorder. I have had somebody hold up a telephone and record and then hand it to the person. It doesn't matter. You don't need video quality. You need to see yourself. You need to be able to see your face, see what it's doing, see what your gesture's doing, see what your body's doing, where your feet are, what's happening with your voice. All those things show up on videos. Best teacher in the world. So yeah, good. Okay, good job. All right, you want to give it a shot? You want to give us, yeah, just a little bit about yourself, maybe a little about your content. If you want to take a spin at that and teach us something, then we'll see where we go.
Glad to do that. 15 years ago, I joined a multi-level marketing company and I racked up $20,000 in debt. None of the family members, including my parents, were willing to pay for that. But even more interesting is I never had the education or the knowledge of financial literacy in order to know what kind of decisions I were making and what the impact was 10 years later. And so when I look at kids that are being raised, when I look at my nieces and nephews and the critical skills that they need or should have, whether it's digital literacy, whether it's financial literacy, these are critical and essential skills that kids of all ages need. I didn't have it, but I would like for all other young adults and young children to have this opportunity to understand digital education and financial literacy.
Okay, you have a great voice. Love it, absolutely love it. You're well grounded. You're looking at people. I think that's a real plus. Now, what's the crux of your message? What do you want us to walk away with more than anything else from what you have to say? I like the opening too. I thought that was about the multi-level marketing. We may work on that a little bit, but what's the essence?
Avoid mistake.
Well,
I guess in my mind, it's helping, it's finding a way to help these young children with the skills and to understand what it is they need to understand at a young age. Many kids will learn it in the household amongst their parents, and others do not.
But you just said a lot. It sounds like you could be teaching kids anything. Isn't it financial education? Or the key is finance?
Financial acumen, business acumen.
From a young age.
How young an age?
No, it's not. It's just something that has been on my mind for a long time.
I think it's a great idea.
Yeah.
And I totally agree with you. So somehow we've got to take people to where they are today. So how can we do that?
You're talking about connecting the
Credit card
audience
Most
to
people
the
are-
message.
How about
Most people
credit
are
card
into
debt?
debt right now.
Yeah, credit card debt.
Credit card debt.
So how old were you when you did this, or do you want to say, so I'm in my young 20s, or I'm in my whenever.
This was in high school.
Oh, okay, when you got into MLM? Ah, lucky you. Okay, so.
Started early.
Yeah.
I know it's a generational thing, isn't it?
Right.
Because
Yeah.
LLMs weren't around.
Yeah.
It wasn't really-
Yeah, I did it too. I didn't lose that much money. But picture this. You're 18 years old. You're so excited because you just heard about this way you can become a millionaire. And so you start trying to sell something to all. Is this familiar to anybody? I would do it in out with that. So I'm in the moment. I'm 18 years old. I'm a cool guy. Is this familiar to anybody? Any of the rest of you do this? And then I'd go back into this person. You see what I'm doing with that? I'm just playing here, but I'm just trying to come up with a way to engage. So I found this great way to make $1 million, and I went out and I tried to sell my family. And what'd they say? No. And then I went to friends, and what'd they say? No thanks. $20,000 later, I realized maybe MLM wasn't for me. I don't know. I'm just.
So that's the aspect of the story.
Yeah.
Something I've always realized is that I've never used story.
You know what we do?
I've never used story.
Exactly.
I've
We
always tried
tell
to be
people.
as credible as possible, so I try to avoid the use of story.
No. Your audience
Power of
loves story. Your audience loves story. You take us right down into the then you get into your content and you say, what I learned at 18, I'm going to try to teach you today because I'm passionate about making sure this next generation can learn from some of the things that we learned. Are you with me? I'm going to talk to you a little about financial acumen. Then you can get into your content a little bit. But take me down into that 18-year-old, wow, I'm going to be a millionaire, this is cool. And then step out of yourself and go, no thanks. and go back to the newspaper, kind of thing. So, because that's exactly what happens with a lot of MLM, is that people
So that's
go
the
there.
relating
Exactly,
part you're talking about.
exactly. But you get us into it a little bit, and then you say, $20,000 later, that's why I'm here. I'd like for you to not have that same issue. And the core and root of it is that we don't have a lot of financial acumen training in our school system today. Well, if any, okay? I mean, there's so many different directions you could go with this, right?
That's the story.
It is. Where do you want to do this program, this
I
presentation?
have
High
no idea.
schools? High schools,
I don't
maybe?
know. It's been a
Yeah,
passion for a long time.
yeah,
And as I started to see my eldest niece who's graduating high school, and she's going off to college, and she's already made some interesting financial choices,
yeah,
supported by the freedom of her parents. She doesn't have that financial acumen. And I would love to have a talk on financial literacy, digital education, not putting up pictures of yourself, not texting pictures of yourself.
yeah, yeah. Oh, that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, yeah. But I think everybody in the room that's a parent can relate. I mean, I have a daughter that went in the military because she got in credit card debt. We didn't bail her out. Have a good life, sweetheart. Pay it off. You're in the Navy now. 4 years. So she did. And you know what? She's the most disciplined of all my kids with money. So, there's stories abound, but it's just figuring out how do you, what you want to try to do is to teach kids to make better decisions from the beginning. Good luck with that. Because they're going to have the same stars in their eyes that you did about the big bucks. Okay, good job, good job. All right, I have a quote up here by Rudy Giuliani where he talks about connecting with people first. He said this on 9/12. Here's the interesting thing about Rudy Giuliani. Most of us, unless we were on the East Coast, didn't know who this guy was. Everybody knows who he is now. Whether you agree with him, whether you don't, whether you like his politics, it does not matter. You know who he is because he was about connection. And he said, you have 2 minutes to get your message across. 2 minutes. So I think that's why we're talking about this. You need to grab your audience's attention quickly and then get into your content, whatever that happens to be. And we can work some more on that. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit now about the different styles, the 4 different styles that are out there in every audience, and the 4 different styles that are right here in this room. Because you need to know how you show up. I use the DISC model because it's simple. Myers-Briggs has 16 things to remember, DISC has 4. I'm liking this one. Because if I'm in a conflict with somebody, I can remember 4 things. I have trouble remembering 16. Myers-Briggs will take you deeper, but DISC will take you deep enough. Here's the interesting thing. You and I have a style when we step up in front of people. We have a way that we come across. It might be a little offensive to some of the people in the room depending on what their style is. We're all comfortable with other people that are exactly the same style as we are, and sometimes we like to mix it up a little, and we'll often partner in our personal life with our opposite on this spectrum. However, our audiences are made up of all 4, so I need to make sure that I address all 4. And I just want to refresh you if you don't know this model. I mean, I use this profiling all the time. We're not going to do a profile today, but I want to refresh you on this and I want you to think contextually about the people that you are speaking to. Because business owners come in all shapes and sizes, government folks come in all shapes and sizes. So we know that we've got all 4 styles out there at any given point in time. So how do you read quickly who you've got in that audience? You've got the active folks, and you've got the thoughtful folks. You have the folks that are active and they move quickly and they speak before they think sometimes, and then you've got the thoughtful, the people sitting back and going, analyzing thought processes. You can see the little wheels turning, but they're not speaking up. The people up at the top of the spectrum are going to be the ones to speak up first, right? Now, when I have a big group, I actually have people move into the quadrants of the room. So if you were to decide, and I won't necessarily have you do that with this small of a group, but if you were to decide, am I active or am I thoughtful? How many of you would say, I'm active, I push the envelope, I move, I want action, I want results. I will sometimes open my mouth before I think about it. Or how many of you would say you're thoughtful?
Can we be both?
You do both, but I want you to think about what you do 55% of the time. What's your predisposition? If you're in a conflict, where do you go?
Thoughtful.
Do you step back? Think about it a little bit. How about you, Bob? You're on the active side? You're moving? Okay. Thoughtful? All right. The other part of the spectrum is this. Are you more questioning, skeptical? You challenge the status quo. You are a task-focused person for the most part. You're scrutinizing and checking things out. Or are you more accepting? You're a good listener. You're a people person. It's easy for you to collaborate. Where are you? Where's my questioning skeptics in the room? A few? Okay. How about my accepting, people focus? You usually will go towards the people when you're gathering information. You're going to call a meeting, you're going to do a focus group, you're going to reach out to people. Okay, so task focus, people focus. So the four spectres on this, you've got the vertical axis and you've got the horizontal axis. This is really simple, guys, but this is how you read. So the active and questioning folks are the ones that we call the high D, which is the dominant style. These are the folks that are moving towards the result. They see the end game, there they go, and sometimes they leave some bodies in the wake. Sometimes some people get, oh, I'm sorry, did I not include you? No, because they're moving, all right? The high I in the DISC model is the influencer. The high I is the person who is moving fast, but who is incorporating other people. The high I has a lot of contacts, a lot of networks, a lot of people that they pull into all their decision-making processes. The accepting thoughtful, now I'm moving down to the thoughtful side of the range, are the people that we label with the letter S. Those are the steady people. They're the easygoing people. They're the ones that don't want to make waves. And in your audiences, they're the ones who will usually speak last because they don't want to cause a fuss. They're a little hesitant. Sometimes you will hear diminutive little words in their speaking like, well, I just wasn't sure what you meant, but I wasn't sure if I was going to ask a question. Okay, it's this hesitance sometimes with the S. Why is that? Because they don't want to offend anyone. The S is a natural team player. Now, it's interesting in corporate America because if you'll notice something, the D is on the opposite end as the S. What do we hear about in corporate America all the time? What do they want? Teamwork! But what do they reward? Leadership and high D behavior, results. Well, guess what? You probably are not going to have both things in the same body. You are going to have one or the other. And in the United States today, we value the D style in leadership, overvalue it sometimes, I think. I don't know how many Trekkies I have in the audience, but a few. I knew I had a few. James T. Kirk, first one out of the ship. Dun, dun, dun. Beam me up, Scotty. He was at the tip of the spear, always. High D leadership style. Love the guy, but you know, he would open his mouth and think about it later. His whole team knew it, but he always had to be at the tip of the spear. Next generation, Jean-Luc Picard was an S leader. He would always call a meeting before he made a decision. They were both very strong leaders. We loved them both, still do. However, Jean-Luc Picard had a very different style of leadership that was collaborative, it was inclusive, And it's much more like the kinds of leaders people are looking for today. And I believe our Xers and Ys particularly are not going to settle for anything less. The next generation's coming up, my kids, yours, my youngest is 30. These young people are about collaboration, if nothing else. And if they feel somebody's trying to shove something down their throat, or it's my way or the highway, or dictatorial type of leadership, they are out of there. If they have a job where they have a boss like that, done. I've watched my kids walk, and I'm thinking, do you have another job? No. Then where are you going? But they, you know, well, I didn't like the way they treated me. I didn't like the way he talked to me. Okay, so you just quit. Yep. Okay, well, I guess I raised independent people. Let's see what happens next. So the questioning, thoughtful folks are the analyticals amongst us. That's the high C. That's the conscientious. Many times these are the people who are in accounting or on the research side of medicine. Some of these kind of quantifiable careers where there's numbers and there's analysis, and they love to just close themselves off in an office. They will collaborate if they see the point, but they would much rather work independently. So first of all, who are you? Because you need to know. That's part of your sacred bundle, and that shows up here right away. Are you telling me things? Tell is D and I. Are you asking me? That's S and C. So how do you show up? And then how do you make sure that you cover all the bases in your audience? That's an absolutely critical skill. So if you look at your handout that I've got for you, it's actually, I've got handout 4 up here, but it's 3. If you look at the influencer, decision maker interaction, I've kind of got a couple of grids here for you, because where I want to take you with this is not to have a discussion, but to look at how do I impact the people in my audience? How are they going to make decisions? Because remember what I said, you don't ever want to give a talk that people don't walk out of there different. They've either decided to buy your product, they've decided that you've got an angle, that you have a story to tell, something of value. So if the D and the I tell and the S and the C ask, the D and the C tend to be a little more controlling as influencer, and the I and the S tend to be a little more accepting. The D and the I make quick decisions. The S and the C are systematic. The I and the S are relational, and the D and the C are task and results focused. So if I have a D that I am trying to convince in my audience, and how am I going to know them? How am I going to know my D? What do? They do just what he's doing, right back there. They will speak up, and when they're ready to move on, you know it. Okay? So you can tell. You got the body language. Okay? They're results focused. I better give that person bullets. I better tell them exactly where we're going. I better, if I'm sensing that the audience needs me to stay a little longer, my Ds need to move on. They're always the first ones that need to move on. Then I have to give them a reason for why we're staying over here. I have to say, I'm going to get to that, but let me make a little more explanation. Or I have to say, why don't you and I get together at the break? Let me move on and make sure that I cover everything for everyone. The Ds love that. It's like, finally, is what they're saying in your audience. Seriously. So you have to accommodate that. Now, what's the I want? How many of you see yourself in that quadrant? Bob, is that where you were seeing yourself? In the I? I forget. Or the D more? Because we did this before. Okay. Anybody see themselves in the I, the influencer? You move quickly, but you're more people focused? Lots of times in sales, we find people, sales managers many times in that role. Okay. That person has got to hear a story and got to watch a video and has to have a lot of color and a lot of fun up here, or they're going to lose interest really fast. They're going to get bored. So they need to connect to something that is real human and also to themselves. And they need to talk about I. Here's how I did that. Here's my story. Yeah.
And who else?
And who? Yeah. So the D's answer the question, you want to answer the question what for the D? What happened? What's going on? What are we going to talk about today? What's the end game? For the I, you want to answer the question who. So who's done this before? Who's my contact? Who's the resource? Who do I need to talk to? Who's your boss? Who? And I's will always say that with a smile on their face. Huh? But they're always going to want to know the who. The S in my audience, I need to make sure that I give people a chance to talk amongst themselves, whether it's on the break or whether I say, get with the person next to you, have a conversation about this topic we're talking about. I have to create opportunities for them to collaborate. They do not want to be in a silo. They're team players. And by the way, this personality stuff starts to come out when the little one is 2. The high S child, and I'm watching this with my grandkids, and I have 4 now. The high S child will naturally share. They don't have to go to kindergarten to learn how to share. They get it. They'll share their lunch, they'll share their toys, they'll share with the cat. They'll share anything, yeah. Whereas the high D child watches all that sharing going on and comes around and just kind of kicks the truck to just see what's going to happen. They're going to mix it up. That's what the D does. So are they ADD? No, they kick the truck because they're a high D and they're challenging the situation. So sometimes I think we over-diagnose things that aren't necessarily there. The truth is the kid is just a little testy. Now here's the deal with the high D child. Give them choices. Give them options. You want to wear the blue jammies or the red jammies? Mommy doesn't care. You want to eat Cheerios, Rice Krispies? Mommy doesn't care. You're a big boy. You decide. You give them choices from the beginning. They love choices and options. And by the way, D's in the workplace, if you don't give them options, they consider you backing them into a corner. They are out of there. And they're the first people that are going to leave and go become your biggest competitor. So, because they're leaders. They're natural leaders. See where I'm going with this? The high I child, by the way, is the one that gets all the other kids together and is teaching school. And they're the teacher. They like to be on stage. So they will put themselves on stage. They'll be the one at the holiday meal who says, I got a story, and they come in the house with a tutu on. And they've never taken ballet, but they've got this thing on and they're gonna dance for you. So they're like performers. They like to perform, they like to joke, they like to be the center of attention. Let them, for heaven's sakes. Don't thwart this, because it starts to come out when they're really little and you can't always tell. What's the little C child doing, our analytical child, in playing? They get the truck and they take it apart. They get they're putting all the pieces down like this and setting everything up. They're also, the S's ask the question how, okay? What, who, D, I. S asks the question how. How does this work? How did we do this before? How does this group make this decision? How? They're process oriented and always has to do with people. The C's ask the question why. So that little child is asking, why? Why is this lumpy, Mommy? Why is the sun there and not here? Why, and they don't let them drive you crazy. They're going to keep asking why. They're going to ask why all their lives. You got all 4 of those. And the reason I'm sharing it with you as children is because sometimes that's an easier analogy to look at.
What was the S?
The S is steadiness.
Answering, right? So he was answering the what?
S is how.
Okay.
Answers the question how. So as a presenter, you want to make sure you answer all 4 of those questions. What am I here to do? Who's done it before? Who are you? Who am I? How does this work? Process. And why are we talking about this in the first place? What impact? Why is this important? All these questions fit together, but, and we can't use behavior profiling when we interview people in corporate America. It's not legal. Because it can be considered discriminatory, obviously. I mean, it's just the way it is. However, by the questions you ask and by the questions the person asks, you can nail them. Because if you put a little pressure on an I, they'll start asking who questions. If you put a little pressure on a D, they'll start asking what questions. So they will tell you who they are. Right there in the moment. Now, why is that important if you're hiring? Because the best teams are all four. The best teams are not just one. I did a team intervention yesterday in a small city where people are really in trouble because there's one I on the team and the rest of the team are all C's. Chaos, confusion, and a lot of conflict. So the best teams are all four. Why? Because we feed off each other's strengths and we look at, it is the crux of diversity is right here in style. So as a presenter, you got to be able to present to all four. Bob, what do you think?
The one you just examined is you do it. So you don't have to beat the results, so that it was just the penalty or chaos.
Well, the D might have been too pushy in there. I mean, it still would have probably had the intervention, but it was interesting because what do you do if you get a bunch of C's together? What is C's really good at? Analyzing, and that we call analysis paralysis. They never get out of the cycle. They just keep picking it apart, and nobody's telling them, zing, let's go up here. They don't have an I to inspire them. They don't have the D to be, okay, folks, we've had enough analysis now. We just need to move forward. So you're right in that regard. So if you have the four people seated around the table, they will come to a solution, but they'll come at it very different ways. But the C, together with other C's many times, will simply spin. Will spin and spin. Why? Because they're not going to make a decision because they don't have enough data. They got to get some more data. Mm-hmm. Engineers can be really bad about this.
The perfect team, one of each.
Yeah, yeah. Really is. But they got to understand this because the truth is the other styles irritate us. We're comfy with working with people who are like us. That's why hiring managers will many times hire people like themselves. Sales organizations many times are all eyes. Well, I'd never get anything done. Just, hey, how you doing? Whoosh, you know, there's all this talking going on and all this fun and all this. And eyes love bright, shiny objects. So they, ooh, bing, go after the, bing, over here, and they're not following up and finishing anything. So it's not the most effective. They have great energy, they're great motivators, but yeah, okay, and what's that got to do with the world, really? So the best teams are all four, in my experience. And you will have all four in your audiences. And cultures, should you speak globally, have styles as well. The prevailing style in the United States during the time of Dwight D. Eisenhower was S. Steady, stay at the job, get the watch, live down the street from your folks. Okay, you with me? This is a steady culture. We are very much a D culture now, driven by results, by numbers. All you have to do is look at corporate leadership and you see that. But there's an imbalance sometimes that happens, and you look at some of the cultures that are very collaborative or innovative. You know, remember when 3M came out with the corporate structure where they had, you know, places as you'd walk down the halls, they'd have the whiteboards, and they'd have places where that's where the sticky note was born, is that they'd have places where you could, you know, brainstorm and stuff. It was a very collaborative, and spaces like what Tom has built right here is a very collaborative workspace. There's glass, you can see people, you can come out here and collaborate, or you can go be by yourself. But that's kind of the workplace of the future, is this small pod sort of environment where you have resources, but you can also be off to yourself. Honor other people for who they are. And the C needs to be by themselves. Don't force them into a meeting. As a matter of fact, they probably don't even need to go to the meeting. Who needs to be in the brainstorming meeting? It's true. But everybody thinks they need to go. But the truth is they don't. Who's going to be good at brainstorming of these four? Eyes. So if I'm doing a strategic plan, I might give everybody a profile ahead of time and say, okay, I want you, and you in the room to brainstorm. Well, what about me? Well, when we come out of the room, we'll tell you what we came up with, and you get to decide what's going to work. Because see, the I's not the best one at deciding what's going to work. They're the best one at coming up with the idea in the first place. So I happen to think sometimes we waste an awful lot of energy by having the wrong people in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's why we have so much
What do
conflict.
you think about what's the psychology of all the cubicles who have been in cubicles for years were 6 feet high, and now they're below that level?
Yeah, and that's driving a lot of people crazy. Because people aren't getting work done because of the distractors. Okay? So we have to be really, really careful with that. So understanding behavioral differences, adapt your style to meet their needs, and discover what the different goals are for each specific style in the audience. What's important in presentations, and on your next page I've got some things about that. The D wants to get a result. The I wants to be involved with people, wants to have fun. The S likes to be involved with people as well. The S also will get a little perturbed if there's somebody in the group that's not pulling their weight and not doing their share. Why? They're about team. They believe very strongly everybody needs to step up and play. They're the one that's going to come to you in the office and go, you know, I noticed that Sue didn't do her part, and we feel like we're doing her work. S is going to do that. Why is that? Because they're about fairness. And so one of the biggest lessons S's have to learn is that people are not always going to play the same game. And sometimes things are not fair. The C wants specific criteria, accuracy, statistics, all those kind of things. If you don't, those numbers like I was talking about on the black screen, they love that because that gives them the data, right? So as we're talking about this, what's coming up for you? What do you need to do differently with your audiences as a result of an analysis, is what we're doing here, of the different styles of people that you have in front of you? How could you take your content and push it out 4 ways? That's a big question. So what do you need to do for the D? Answer what? What's the result? What's the outcome? What's the end game? Right?
How can you be a leader in doing that?
How can you be a leader? How can you be in charge in doing that? Or what do I have to do to stay in control? These are about control. That's not bad. They don't have to control the world. They just got to control their part of it. So what do you have to do to stay in control? What's the I need from you? Who's done this before? See, the I's question about incredible travel, rates of speed with travel is going to be, well, who's been in that tube? Who did that? Who could I talk to who's had this experience? Who? Right? And if you don't have that for them, they're not going to take you seriously. What's the S person need? How? Okay, so explain to me how this process works, how I put the pieces together, how everybody contributes, how everybody participates. So the S in a presentation that's about environment is going to say, well, how could I do this at home? How can I, just one little person, do this at home? I mean, it's nice for you to talk about this big program, but how do I fit? That's what they want to know. Okay? And what does the C want to know? Why are we doing this? Why are we asking these questions? Why are we doing it now instead of next week? Why are you pushing me? Why? All right? And they can get a little testy because remember, they're the analytical and they need to make sure all the boxes are checked. They're also the person that if you do a handout, you better cover every page or tell them why you didn't. Because she skipped that. She didn't do that. And they'll want to know what that is. Okay, we're at a stopping point. again to take a break and switch over the video.